Good evening, morning, or afternoon, whichever it is, whenever you're watching this, wherever you are. My name is Eric Postma. I am the assistant publisher for Grail Quest Books, and it's been a little while, but we're back now with another interview with some of our excellent authors, and we're doing this because we're just about wrapping up pre-publication work on the third book in their series. And correct me on the pronunciation, guys, if I get it wrong, but Ryus Conflict. It's basically set a few hundred years in the future, and humanity's got an outpost out in some outlying solar system out near the edge of the galaxy, and boom, all of a sudden, unexpectedly, they find themselves fighting an alien invasion, and it's about humanity's response to that. And, well, I don't want to give too much away. But I will say it's one of the most interesting sci-fi books I've gotten to work on, both for Grail Quest and in my freelance work. So it's a real pleasure to be able to talk with the creators tonight. What we have with us is 2/3 of the creative team that created this little sci-fi opus. We have Brian and we have Mark over here from jolly old England on the other side of the pond. So it is a little late for those guys over there. So we really appreciate them staying up a little bit so we could actually have this conversation. So Brian, Mark, how you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Mark, you all right there?
Yeah. All good.
Okay, great. Anyway, and the now the third guy who couldn't be with us tonight, Mike. Now, why don't you guys explain a little bit what role you guys all played in the creative process of creating Ryus?
Well, I suppose that the three of us kind of collaborated on the overall story arc. But Mike and Mark would have primarily focused on the writing aspect of it, and I would have worked on some of the concept art that's in the first novella, and that's obviously the cover art for the books. So that's in a nutshell. That would be, how we've kind of tackled it together. In the very early. Go ahead, Mark.
Go, Mike. Go. Or Brian. Go.
In the very.
Mark, can you speak up a little bit? You're coming in real faint again.
Okay. No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt Brian there. No, just that. In essence, I was kind of the blow-in on this particular endeavor. I think Brian, you really sort of had the framework and the general thrust of the world and the events sketched out, and yourself and Mike got talking, and Mike kind of hooked me in sort of early enough in the design process, but. I think you'd got the general theme and thrust of things going by then.
Yeah, we had a fairly broad kind of arc, so we knew we had a human element in the story, and we also knew there was going to be an alien element, and we had again some top line sort of broad ideas for that, but as part of the creative process, I was working on concept sketches for the aliens, for some of the human spaceships, things like that. But it was, Mike and Marek really took it on board to build out a backstory and character profiles for all of the main characters across the two species. And Mark's work on the Rada species in particular really fleshed that out and brought those guys to to life in a big way before we'd even started to work on the actual writing of the books themselves.
Okay, well, and I gotta say, the work on developing the Rada, I thought was done very, very well. One of the things that I really enjoyed about it was how it jumps in point of view from the human characters, and there's a couple of main characters. You've got the twin brothers, Jason and Daryl, and then their friend Maya Salas, but then it'll go, and you've got several lead characters amongst the Rada as well, which they weren't just villains. They were genuine characters with real goals, real purpose behind their actions, other than just to be antagonists for the good guys. So I thought that was one of the things that really stood out, was that the the bad guys were fully developed characters in their own right, very, very three-dimensional. And I'm not going to go so far as to say that I can see where somebody could decide to root for them, but you can see their point of, you can see where they're coming from, what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, they were. I think we had a lot of fun with those guys, because we were just talking before we got started here about how there was kind of a long gestation for this whole set, and I think partly because we kind of enjoyed those kind of initial chats and discussions, just kind of riffing on ideas and sort of getting things kicked off, and fleshing in a little about the sort of giving a bit of texture really to the different factions involved. Precisely as you say, Eric, because we wanted to avoid the aliens just being the antagonist. To give them. Ultimately, you're going to be rooting for the humans. Ultimately,
I hope so.
Yeah. So, and the sort of the aliens are, that they're hostile, they're warlike. There's a reason they're the invading party. But there's just the stakes are that much higher when you can have some kind of understanding and sort of get that there is a point of view for them too. I think Mike, in fact, as well. So I remember he sort of pushed some aspects of the religious and political elements of the sort of Rada culture, and this notion of unity and sort of cohesion that is central to the aliens, to the point where it's almost something honorable. It's something you can respect, that when they invade, they take over a place, but once you're taken over, you're as much a citizen of their empire as the origin race are. That there is it's not just, you don't become a slave race, but you become a sort of a full citizen, as it were. And so there's kind of that notion of unity that drives their acquisition is kind of an interesting one that I think came out of stuff that Mike in particular was working on.
So sort of the Pax Romana, take it to a couple more notches.
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly one of the inspirations there.
Now, you actually lead perfectly into my next question. Now, what were some of your inspirations when you were drawing, when you're trying to draw on bringing out the various aspects of the Rada? And Brian, I want to, in just a minute, we'll get to you. I want to talk about some of the human aspects, especially the technology involved. But Mark, the other inspirations for the Rada, where did you draw from?
Well, you're sort of perceptive there in the notion of the Roman Empire. And that's present, I think, in a lot of some of the language we use. There's terms taken from Roman military use and so on that play a role. And beyond that, I suppose there's elements of samurai culture in there as well, or just the notion of the honorable warrior, which occurs in a number of different cultures. That that ultimately there's a sort of a respect for everyone having a role to play within the society. That the engineers are respected for being excellent engineers. The politicians are respected for being excellent politicians. But ultimately, everyone's going to spend some time in the combat arena too. It's whatever else you're good at, you're going to be doing. And that, it's kind of old school. It's useful for an invading force to kind of ram home for people that, look, these guys are badass. They're going to be trouble.
Even the clerk can probably kick your butt.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
So, and it's but it's kind of just this. The aim is not to make them violent for violence sake, but rather to use the combat as a means of trying to articulate their discipline. And that's what makes them so dangerous, and what makes them so powerful as an empire is this this notion of unity that underlies them, and the discipline with which they will sort of apply themselves to maintaining that unity. That it's a religious issue for them. They will fight to their own death, because ultimately what matters is the empire.
Well, yeah, I mean, even that's even the basic philosophy behind pretty much any military. They take everybody in, they make them all dress the same, march the same, look the same. They kind of break them down, and then rebuild them as part of a unit. And of course, especially here in America, the Marines and the Army, combat is a huge part of that. So that makes sense. Now, Brian, going back to the human side of it. Now, obviously, we bring with the humans, it's much less of general unified. You got much more disparate qualities and everything, even amongst the main characters. You've got Salus, which her first name is pronounced. Is it pronounced May or Mai?
My Salus.
My Salus. Okay. You got Mai, who sort of is the representative of the warrior cultures amongst humanity, and then you've got the Oros, Jason and Daryl, and their father, who represent almost I don't know, not exactly Lewis and Clark pioneer spirit, but along those same lines. Now, where did you draw from those characters? Where were you pulling from?
Well, we really wanted to challenge the humans, and so there was a number of ways that we kind of approach that. Within the human culture, they're not united. So whereas the Rada are incredibly united as a force, the humans completely lack that. So it's a very corporate universe for humanity. They stretch out across the galaxy to solar systems that are very far away. This story takes place on the outer edge of human civilization. Corporations have invested decades preparing this planet, where they're going to reap that reward.
Like the colonial period.
Exactly. And it's taken decades to make it become, they're cresting the wave where they're about to become very successful when all this happens. So with that,
quite the speed bump.
That's it. Yeah. So with all that internal conflict in there, with the different corporations kind of vying for power, there's going to be bad guys in the human circle. But then you also have, in contrast to that, you've got honorable characters. Like My Salus would be a very honorable character. Very much like she's like a kind of a samurai of ancient Japan. Whereas then Neb and his family, they represent that kind of pioneer spirit. They're not a big corporation. They're not wealthy, but he's kind of cut out a little business for himself. As kind of he brings freight around the solar system. So our heroes are actually kind of anti-heroes. So Neb is not a warrior, but he's got a good heart and a good nature. And when he sees that there's a problem, he's willing to kind of to put his own life at risk to try and help people. And Mai as well is her sense of honor and her maybe friendship with Neb puts her on that kind of front line as well. The other kind of aspect about challenging humanity was that we wanted to make their technology actually very difficult for them. So, for example, in Star Wars, you can climb in a spaceship, put in your coordinates, punch it, and then you're in the next part of the galaxy. The humans can't do that. Long distance travel and faster than light travel is actually very, very difficult for them. It's a real struggle. So to find planets and to get out of them is actually really, really hard work, which is
very, very risky.
Very risky and very costly as well. So when the invasion hits, they get it's very easy for the enemy to isolate our heroes from the rest of humanity. So nobody's coming to rescue them. They've got to sort this out for themselves. So that's it's using technology as a method to kind of make our heroes have to work much, much harder in the universe that we've created.
Yeah, especially in the, and I don't want to get too much into the second and third books, but especially in the first book, yeah, they're completely isolated, and it's very easy with the way you set it up, with the need for the hyperlight beacons and everything to sort of be the lighthouses along the way when you're doing faster than light travel. You can picture the whole system literally just getting lost, and no one ever actually being able to find it again.
Yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's it. Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I really sort of enjoyed about the way that that sort of first book plays out. Actually, in the way Mike wrote it, is there's that nice tension that Brian talks about. That the humans are always under pressure. So even before the invasion, life is not easy. And there's that kind of interesting dynamic between that pioneering spirit, which is vital. It's it's what makes the Oro family and the Oro company successful, is their willingness to just roll up their sleeves, dig in, no matter what needs to get done. It's whoever is there gets it done. You don't outsource things. It's you dig in and you step up. But that ultimately when things go wrong and when challenges are faced, it's stepping up together is how success is managed. It's the pioneering spirit is the pioneering of a community, not just the sort of taming of the wilderness by a single individual or by a single hero. Which is why I think sort of Brian was talking about they're not quite heroes, because they're work a day. They're not superheroes. But they're not
superheroes. They're heroes more in the they're heroes more in the Chestertonian sense of it's heroic for them. It's almost heroic enough for them just going about their everyday business, but then they have to kick it up to like a genuinely heroic level when the aliens show up and it's like, oh no, now what are we doing?
And then sort of people who've been in a situation where just, as you say, day-to-day living's tough enough. You've got to, who's going to now step up to the point that we never thought we'd have to. It's like, well, here's where we're having to deal with something. This is a humanity who have never encountered aliens before, in essence. And as such, it's sort of.
And I would say that right there. Actually, you mentioned that. Yeah, humanity's never encountered not just anything like the Rada, but not aliens at all. So certainly no sentient life within the story. So I really like Brian, how you guys emphasize that throughout the series, that when the story did make its way back to Earth and the other systems, people didn't believe it.
Yeah,
people genuinely were like, "No, you're crazy. You're hallucinating on your own hyperlight fumes or whatever." This couldn't have happened.
It was see in book one. Our heroes struggle to raise a fleet to rescue some survivors from a particular moon, but then that's kind of echoed in book two, where the human forces have to struggle to raise an armada to come back in and oust the invaders, because nobody believes them, and because of all of the corporate infighting within humanity, they just think it's a ploy by another organization to take control of the corporate ladder.
Right. It's like, oh, you want us to invest all of our resources going and looking here, and you're going to take us over there or something, or you're just completely Looney Tunes. But of course, as we know, they are convinced, and they do go in and manage to actually meet the Rada almost on an even playing field when they get there. But again, I don't really want to give any more away than that, because there's 3 books in this series, people. Guess what? There's fighting that happens, and the humans don't completely get their butts handed to them. I don't think that's really a spoiler.
No. It does, I guess it does bring up, I don't know, yeah, I guess we're sort of treading on spoilers, all right, but it does bring up kind of just that one of the things that we wanted to do with the RADA as well, but again, it's partly to make them relatable, to make give stakes to both sides, was that the RADA are coming in, they're you know, at least in some respects, their technology is certainly well beyond what humanity has available to it. But they're not coming at the height of their powers either. There's a reason that you know, even though they are a more advanced civilization technologically, there is a reason that the human beings could potentially step up to them. And so I don't want to go into too much detail there, I suppose, for the sake of book 2. But there's a sort of a point to the you're not seeing the entire strength of the Imperium all at once.
Yeah, exactly. The RADA have their own certain they have their own certain disadvantages that they have to overcome, and they don't, like you just said, they don't necessarily represent the pinnacle of the Imperium necessarily. Whereas, yeah, when humanity does come in, that's the best we got.
Yeah,
it's all in.
Like literally, it's literally everything that they can scrape together to go in and try to save the day. But again, we won't talk anymore about how that happens because it's really cool. It's really good, really cool the way you guys managed to draw out, kind of draw out the action, everything going on with the battles and everything were very clearly laid out, both on ground and the space battles. There were various points where I could actually picture the space battles playing out in my head, which is, of course, exactly what you're going for. It's like, what would this look like as a movie? I can kind of imagine it.
Yeah.
And it would be one heck of a movie.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, that there's no secret to where the inspirations were coming from there. It's sort of, I grew up on Star Wars. I worked through Babylon 5, and it's sort of at its height in the 90s and other things. So it's, we want to do some good old-fashioned space operas. So.
Oh, yeah. Why not? I mean, part of me wants to see somebody do a space battle, to try to do a space battle on screen that actually is how it would really look, given all the physics and everything involved. But I honestly think it'd probably be really boring.
Yeah.
It would just be a couple of like really, really big ships with no interesting design whatsoever, just like probably lobbing missiles at each other from like 20,000 miles away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
That would be absolutely no fun.
And that there's not going to be shields or any of that kind of stuff. So it's literally, it's whoever ever got the fastest nuke, basically. It's and
right.
More than likely everyone's dead.
That's true. It'd be like essentially an interstellar knife fight. Everyone's gonna die.
Actually, that's kind of an interesting point, because the RADA have in their weaponry on their ships, there's they do have obviously high-powered munitions, but they also have a technology that just allows them to hurl just chunks of stuff, at enemy spaceships as well, which is really a very effective, very powerful weapon that they've got.
All of a sudden, all the wreckage becomes a weapon. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that would be scary if I was on the receiving end of that. But all right, now you mentioned a little bit that this has been a long time coming. Like I said before we went live, I mean, I've been working behind the scenes as just kind of a beta reader and proofreader for like 4 years or something, going back to the first one that was published way back in January of 2014. Now it's been even longer for you guys, obviously. So you guys clearly have have day jobs and everything. How do you like kind of keep the focus and everything going for, especially amongst 3 different creators for that long?
It is tough. You know, early on, we kind of mapped out sort of targets and goals for how we were going to do this. Trying to hit, though, we obviously had planned for a much quicker delivery of the 3 books.
Right.
You know, life gets in the way. You know, you've got work commitments, family commitments, and next thing you're trying to fit this in at you know, like late at night, you know, 10 p.m., midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And it is tough going. I know we would do, when we hit November, Mark would prompt us to do these creative sprints. So for the month of November, we'd like try and blast out, you know, 3 chapters or, you know, a couple of illustrations. I mean, for the most part, I think we pulled it off. So November was traditionally our most productive month in the year. And then we would just kind of tip away. And eventually Mike, you know, finished book 1 and we got that out there. It got put out, which was a huge landmark. And then Mark followed up, you know, a few months later with book 2. And then book 3 kind of hot on the heels. But then, you know, we slowed down again, that I wasn't getting as much time to focus on the concept art. You know, there was, you know, obviously, you know, when we did get feedback, you know, from an editorial perspective, it took us time to get those edits in place and then get proofs back. So it you know, short answer, it's when you do something like that, it's tough, and you're in it for a long game. And you know, if anyone's thinking of ever producing a book, you've got to be ready to play that long game and not give up, not quit until you've done what you need to do.
Well, I definitely think in terms of what the final product is, I think you guys definitely pulled it off. It's definitely worth reading. Like I said, the first book is out now. You can either find it on Amazon or Grail Quest Books.wordpress.com. You can get it directly from the publisher, and or like I said, Amazon. Do you guys have your own websites where it might be available at?
We have just the Facebook page.
Okay.
Facebook.com/Ryus Conflict. But it's other than that, I mean, it's Amazon and obviously Grail Quest Books.
Of course. Now, do you guys have any other work out there?
I have done 2 other books that are not fiction related, but they're. I'm an avid action figure collector.
Okay.
So I collect G.I. Joe, and I also collect the Vitruvian Hacks Greek mythology line. From Boss Fight Studios, which would be an independent toy maker.
I've never heard of this. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, they're superb, you know, highly articulated action figures. But these would be like reference books for collectors. So
okay.
In the G.I. Joe book, we focused more on the G.I. Joe Retaliation movie line. So it was all the toys and vehicles related to that. Okay. And then with Vitruvian Hacks, that's the Greek mythology line by Boss Fight Studio. We focused on their Series 1 figures, which were released between 2015 and 2016. So that's I would have done all the photography, all the design, and then a friend of mine, Paddy Lennon, would have written all the editorial about the figures.
Okay. Well, very cool. Very cool. Are those available on Amazon as well?
They are no. They're up on Etsy. And you can find the Etsy link from Facebook.com/Total Retaliation and Total Hacks.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Before we went live, I warned these guys that I could possibly be interrupted by any one of my 6 kids. Here we are. Well, hey, buddy, how you doing?
What are you doing?
Well, I'm talking to these fine gentlemen. They live all the way in England, and I'm on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah,
like really.
Totally.
How could you get across the Atlantic Ocean?
You're very enthusiastic. What can I do for you, buddy? What can I do for you?
Can I? I wish I could use a device.
I'll bet you do. What have you been using them today? A lot?
No, not a lot.
No, you're sure?
I'm sure.
Okay, you can for a little bit.
Thanks.
I'll be upstairs before too long, buddy. All right. All right. It's
You
that.
need a plane to get
Excuse me.
all the way across the Atlantic Ocean.
Planes are helpful for that, yeah. Or a ship. All right, bud.
Don't sharks eat ships?
No, sharks don't eat ships.
Is it why they're disgusting to sharks?
No, they're just way too big. All right, bud. I got to go back to this, all right?
So glad sharks don't eat ships.
No, yeah, I'm glad too. He's very inquisitive.
Me and Mark had a Hangouts call last week, and just a catch up with the two of us. And my kids were, all three of them were all over me. I had to get off the call.
Yeah, I know exactly what that's like. All of a sudden, it's like, I'm getting mobbed. But I was giving you guys a chance to plug your other work. Mark, did you have any other work that you're willing to plug here before we wrap things up?
I don't have anything sort of particularly on set. This was actually kind of a fun learning experience for me. It was kind of one of those. It was trying to figure out how to, I've written stuff all my life, but I've never gone to the point of trying to push it towards publication or so on. So it's actually been sort of a really useful experience to do it as a collaborative team up front. That there's a lot of fun just in the riffing during the kind of design and fleshing out
bet.
kind of ideas off everyone else. And then Brian talked about the when I try to push a sprint because life gets in the way, family and so on. It's demanding. It's kind of an ongoing thing. So even the kind of period, there'll be periods of time, particularly I think with the third book, when we sort of let it drift for a little while, and we all had young families, so all of us had just there'd be 6 months maybe had gone by without really making progress of any kind. And I kind of dug back in, and one of the things I enjoyed doing was I get into drafting the book, and after any writing session I'd text both Mike and Brian. It's like, right, here was today's word count, and it was sort of just having that kind of public word count, which I know you kind of see it as a piece of advice from Cory Doctorow is a really
little accountability, yeah,
exactly that. And it's kind of, and it's also it's sort of a useful tracker of it's progress, right? It might be only 250 words of progress, but I can report that at least.
Yeah. It's better than no words.
Yes.
That's it. So
yep, I know what that's like.
That was good fun.
Well, great. Well, goodness. Again, the second and third books should be coming out in the near future. We've got some things to wrap up on the publishing end, but it should, especially with the second one, it should pretty much just be crossing T's and dotting I's, and hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to get these out, and you guys can actually see the fruits of your long labors out there in public. Certainly, I hope the public enjoys it as much as I have, and that they buy it in copious numbers.
Yes.
And also, well, again, one more question before we wrap things up, and I'll let you guys go because I know, like I said, I know it's late over there. Do you guys have any other plans for any other work in the future?
Ooh, good question. I mean, we had discussed, other at very big picture level, maybe other kind of universes, other ideas. I know Mike would love to explore something in the fantasy space, but nothing concrete just yet.
Well, I definitely hope you guys can solidify something sooner rather than later, because again, great stuff to work on. I hope the public receives it as well as I have. Again, you can find Ryus Conflict Book 1, which is Ryus Lost, over at grailquestbooks.wordpress.com, or on Amazon. You can just get it straight from there. I believe it comes in ebook and print versions. You can also find me at gingermaneditorial.wordpress.com, and look for more from Brian, Mark, and Mike, who's not with us, hopefully in the near future. And until then, well, stay tuned for the next update from Grail Quest Books.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks, Eric.